'Tis I. Hey everyone, glad to see you back, glad to see you looking fresh, and today I want to talk about the MCU, my current feelings on it, honestly my current lack of feelings about it, where I'm at with it, where I see it going, and this is probably going to be a long video. I got a lot to say about the topic. So, where are we at? Where have we been with the MCU? I want to get a little bit first into where my journey with the MCU started. Like a lot of people, I saw the Avengers back in 2012 on the big screen. Told the story before, I'll tell it again here. The Avengers is my favorite film of all time. And it's not just because I think it's a great movie and I really appreciate the story. I do all those things. But I got the chance to go see it back in 2012 on the big screen. I didn't go to the theaters a lot back then. It wasn't like a common occurrence like it is now by any means. It was a rare event when I was a kid. 2 times a year, maybe 3, pushing it. But it was not a common thing to go to the movies, so it was a big deal. Coming out of that theater, I was like, I've never seen a movie like that before, where I had that much fun. I loved all the characters. I loved the music and the story so much. I just had never felt that before. And that feeling, that emotion that the Avengers gave me, I'll cherish forever. That's a memory that'll be lived on forever. It's because of that I went and sought out the rest of the films in the MCU. I went and saw Iron Man, Captain America, the First Avenger, and Thor, Iron Man 2, and Incredible Hulk. And then I just kind of kept spiraling. I watched some more comic book movies. Then I branched out from there because I honestly ran out of comic book movies that I wanted to see. So I started picking up other genres, other things I was interested in. Let's watch this director, this actor, and I just expanded out. And now here I am. Recently, I crossed over 4,000 movies. So by one movie, one cinematic experience, I was able to have seen so much in the world of cinema. And I'm still going. There's still so much to see. So The Avengers is a very, very special movie to me. The MCU will always have an important part in my heart. So that's why it's painful now to see the current state it's in. Currently, the year is 2024. We have one MCU movie coming out this year, and honestly, thank goodness we do, because I am beyond burnt out on the MCU. It's crazy to think the whole term of comic book fatigue has been thrown around since 2014. I remember hearing conversation about the Winter Soldier movie coming out. Are we getting too much? Are we experiencing comic book fatigue? And we weren't by any means at the time. We were not experiencing comic book fatigue. The whole reason that was a discussion back then is Man of Steel didn't do incredibly well. It didn't do the blockbuster numbers that DC wanted. The critics didn't adore it. So that sparked this whole discussion of whether or not are we going through comic book fatigue. The Wolverine movie at the time wasn't incredible. There was this whole thing of well, maybe we've seen too much and maybe we should slow down. Fast forward 10 years, past 2014, here we are in 2024, and yes, comic book fatigue has absolutely set in. But here's the interesting point about comic book fatigue, is that things like Invincible are still doing really well. The Spider-Man games are still doing well. Heck, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was one of my favorite movies of last year. So I'm not going to tell you that good comic book stuff isn't still coming out, because that's simply not true, and good comic book things can still do well in today's marketplace. That is not the only thing bogging the situation down. It is not a be-all end-all of well, there's just too much. That's it. People are tired of it. People are not tired of it. People are tired of the mediocrity that they've experienced over the last little bit. The MCU used to be divided up into phases. It still is divided into phases, but I'll get into it in a second. So The Avengers was the cap off of phase 1. Perfect bookend to that story. All these movies led up to one big, massive event that at the time was the 3rd highest grossing film of all time. Massive cultural phenomenon. Phase 2 ends with Age of Ultron. Or does it? They sometimes say Ant-Man is the ending of Phase 2. That's so stupid, I'm going to be honest. That's a really dumb bookend. Age of Ultron should be the finale to it. That end of conversation. End of Phase 2, Age of Ultron. The Avengers should be the end caps. Because then Phase 3, Endgame. It's called Endgame. That should be the end cap of the Infinity Saga of Phase 3. But again, they're saying it's Spider-Man No, far from home. I'm gonna mess that up a few times in this video, I guarantee. No Way Home and Far From Home, the names are much too similar, and I get them mixed up a lot. I know which movie is which if you give me a second, but the names are similar, and that's silly. I don't like it. But so the phases used to lead up to something big. It used to have that payoff, like a good season finale to a TV show. You stuck with it. And then you saw the finale, you were rewarded for your hard efforts. Watching a couple movies isn't really hard work. But again, I'll get into that later. It should be easy, and it should be easy to pop in wherever you felt like. Like, there's a reason that, except for the Iron Man movies, they weren't called Thor 2. They were Thor the Dark World. Like, if you wanted just the Thor movies, you could pop into Thor the Dark World if you seemed interested by, like, the Dark Elves or whatever. Probably would have been a little bit disappointed by the movie itself, but you could pop in wherever you wanted. Guardians does it too, because Guardians Volume 2 is a direct follow-up to the first Guardians. But even still, you could watch Guardians Volume 2 without having seen the first one. And that was a great thing. You pop in wherever you wanted, go back, fill yourself in, like I did with the first Avengers movie. Now, I will say it gets a little bit tougher the further down you go. I would not recommend popping into Endgame, having seen nothing. But one of my buddies in college went with me to go see Avengers Endgame, having only seen a handful of these MCU movies. He knew his Iron Mans and his Caps and his Thors and stuff, and he could follow along well enough with the story because it's just well told. It's just easy to follow. And sure, he didn't get the massive payoff that we did, but he could watch the movie just fine. So the end caps of the phases. Look at Phase 4. We're in Phase 5, if you didn't know. We've gone through an entire phase of the MCU since Endgame. And what was the end cap of Phase 4? It was Black Panther 2, also known as Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now, Wakanda Forever is a great movie. It's not bad, and I'll get into the quality of the movies in a little bit. But it is not the finale of a phase. When I heard that was like the capper, I was like, what? There's not going to be any team up? There's not going to be any payoff to any of the stuff we just previously saw in Phase 4? It's just, the sequel to Black Panther. I mean, the way sequels work in the MCU, sure, it's also the sequel to Endgame and Infinity War and all this other stuff. But that's it? That's okay. MCU burnout exists to me because there's been no payoff. Been a lot of build-up since Endgame. Been a lot of attempted build-up, I'll say that. No payoff. No Avengers. No Avengers. We don't even call it the Avengers. Let there be 4 Avengers films. I'm gonna make more. Because brand recognition. Yeah. But, have a team-up movie. Have something that give me a little bit of payoff for what I've been watching here. And this wouldn't be as much of an issue, right? Because Phase 4 started in 2021. This year, 2021, is a topic on its own. Phase 4 ended in 2022. Not very long. Not very long phase, is it? Quickest phase of the MCU. But man, did it have a lot of stuff in it. Quickest phase of the MCU, most bloated phase of the MCU. So, 2021, kickoff of Phase 4, which honestly should have been Spider-Man Far From Home, but whatever. Call it Black Widow is the first movie in Phase 4. Weird movie to kick it off because it's a prequel. It has nothing to do with the current phase other than introducing like Yelena, Red Guardian, stuff like that. Interesting new characters that I like. I like Black Widow. Good movie. That came out in July of that year. September, 2 months later, Shang-Chi comes out. Another really good movie. Wow, okay. Wasn't a massive fan of Black Widow. Good movie. Shang-Chi, great movie. Like it. 2 months later, November rolls around. Another MCU movie comes out. 3, and that's a lot. Eternals comes out. Divisive movie. Very divisive movie. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people just find it boring. Split opinions everywhere you look. No one can agree on whether or not this movie is warranted or not, worth it or not, should be here or not. Even now, there's been no payoff to that movie. I haven't heard the word Eternal in any MCU anything since that movie came out. I haven't heard the name Shang-Chi since that movie came out. Great. Awesome. I love that we set these things up and don't pay them off. Awesome. However, 1 month later, Spider-Man No Way Home comes out. I love the movie. Honestly, going to see it, massive theater experience. Had to been there. One of those things you had to see in theaters. It's like I told friends, you gotta go see this. Like, don't get this movie spoiled. You have to see it for yourself, and it's worth it. It's worth that experience. Like, people hooting and hollering and cheering. I'm from a place where people didn't do that a lot. People, even when I saw Endgame, people didn't like stand up and cheer when the big things happen. You could feel the energy in your room when something happened. Like, you could feel like the room, people like, oh, like very quietly to themselves. But like No Way Home, people were cheering, people were screaming, people were clapping. It was awesome. I loved it. One of my favorite theater experiences of all time. No one's talking about what just happened, though. 1 month ago, we had one of these movies. Eternals came and went in a month's time. Are you kidding me? An MCU movie coming and going in that quick of a succession? Sure, I guess I'll just toss it under the rug. Who cares? Who cares about all these other characters that we just introduced and barely fleshed out in our own movie? Okay, so the rest of 2021. The movie's in a bubble. I'll say this for all of Phase 4. The movie's in a bubble, not the problem. Like I said, Black Widow, good, fun movie. Shang-Chi, really liked that one. Ended up on my best of the year list that year. Eternals, I liked Eternals. Not everyone does. Fine. Have one divisive one in there, interesting enough. Spider-Man, Far From Home, really love it. The rest of the Phase 4 stuff, Thor, Doctor Strange, both divisive in their own ways. I enjoy both of them. And then Black Panther. Okay, 7 movies in a phase, not unheard of. Still a lot in such a short succession, but doable. A doable amount in a phase. We put that over the course of 4 years rather than 2. I don't think we'll be having nearly this discussion at the moment. But the movies in a bubble, I like all of them. There wasn't one in that lot that I'm like, that was bad. Don't like that. Maybe I don't find the comedy in Thor as good the second time around. Maybe I find Doctor Strange 2 a little bit haphazard the second time around. I don't know. I've only seen him once, but I liked him when I saw him. Sure. However, 2021, going back to that discussion, the big thing that is ruining the MCU at the moment is television. Now, I am harsh on television. For a long time, I have not been a TV guy. I say this to everybody who asks me to recommend them television, who asks me, like, is this show any good? Have you heard anything about it? Not a TV guy. I have my favorites. I'm not immune to television. I love Game of Thrones. I love The Boys. I loved The Witcher at a time. I like Stranger Things. I'm not immune to the pop culture zeitgeist of certain television shows. However, the MCU stuff all of a sudden comes out. I'm extraordinarily nervous hearing about all these new things coming. In 2021 alone, there was 5 television shows. The very first one, which probably still stands as the very best the television has ever done, is WandaVision. Hearing about this concept, okay, they're going to play with TV tropes, they're going to go through the eras of television, they're going to use the medium to its full advantage. Awesome. Because what I was afraid of going into these is that they're going to be bloated MCU stories with, let me be honest with you, I love the franchise to death. Any more bloat in some of these movies and it's going to get boring, right? I love them for their characters. I love them for their stories a little bit. Characters is the big thing. Music, not as much. But easily could get boring if bloated too much. It took them until the second show to prove me right that I should be scared of such a thing. Because Falcon and the Winter Soldier, way too long. Characters that, while we all like, don't need to be A-class stars. So Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out, like I said, it's bloated, it's a mess. And this is the problem I have with a lot of TV shows. This is a movie that's been pumped full of filler and fluff, and then sliced into episodes. That's not what I wanted to see when it came to television. I'm sure sometimes I sound like I'm being only cater to my taste. But if you're going to make a TV show, make a TV show. I like WandaVision because it's a TV show. I like What If, which is part of the 2021 discussion. I'll just say right now, for the What If stuff, I didn't watch What If when it came out. I waited until right before Doctor Strange because I figured I had to catch up with it. Turns out I didn't. What If is right now it's just been for funsies, which I kind of like it. It's played with the multiverse stuff that's we're all messing around with right now in the MCU, and that's not the issue with it. That's just some flavor and whatever. We'll throw that to the side. The What If season 1, I liked that. And I liked She-Hulk because it's a television show. It uses its TV tropes to its, like, episodes are episodes. It's not one big movie sliced up like Falcon and Winter Soldier is, like Hawkeye is, and also Loki season 1. Now, people like Loki. I haven't seen Loki season 2. I haven't seen What If season 2. And I haven't seen Echo because I'm burnt out, okay? I'll get to them, I'm sure. They really feel like homework, but I'm, like I said, this is a long discussion, and I'll get back to those. Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye. Those are movies. Bloated movies that were sliced up. You trim the fat out of those things, you make them 2 hours long, you put them in a theater, they're better. They're better products. Okay? What If, WandaVision, She-Hulk, the only things that exist as television shows. And I guess I'll talk about it a little bit. The 2022 stuff were a lot of new characters. When they announced the slate of TV shows, I was interested to see, like, okay, WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, notable characters we know. Okay, so we're getting new stuff only in the television show. I've been not a fan of Miss Marvel in the comics. I've been not a big fan of She-Hulk. I like She-Hulk well enough. I'm pretty indifferent to her. Miss Marvel, I just think they throw in a lot of stuff and they don't use it very well. So, I don't know. But I will say the actress who plays Miss Marvel was the best part of The Marvels, which came out as the most recent MCU movie, most recent MCU project I've seen. So, I've been turned around on her. Good work, Marvel. I like Miss Marvel now. You did your job. She-Hulk divided a ton of people in the very first episode. This monologue that divided the internet. You know, some people found it empowering, some people found it disorienting, out of nowhere. Right place, right time is a big thing with this one. I don't think having a character we just met tell Bruce Banner, of all characters, that they've experienced more hardship in their life than they have. Because let's look back in the MCU, and let's look back at the first Avengers film, and we can see that Bruce Banner, amazing speech about how, like, he put a bullet in his mouth and the other guy spit it out. Wow, did that scene hit in theaters. It hits every time I see it. It's such a depth to Bruce Banner, you know, and we've lost the depth over the last 10 years, you know? That could have been anybody saying, I've lost more than you. To him, it's such a bad way to handle it. We've seen characters with loss and death in the family, and go through so much hardship in the MCU. And just, like, it just felt a little preachy, is what it felt like. Sure. The rest of the show, CGI is bad. That's, like, the biggest negative to it. Sometimes I don't find it that funny, but comedy's subjective. But I like the show overall. Moon Knight. The big one. Been a Moon Knight fan for a long time. I like Mark Spector. I like the version of Moon Knight where he's basically a white-cladded Batman who likes wearing white because he likes to see his enemies to see him. I like the stuff where we don't know, even as a reader, if there are voices in his head or his own mind, or if it's an actual god talking to him. Does he have powers or not? I like the confusing nature that Moon Knight has. Of course, the MCU is going to play it straight. Yes, there's a god talking to him. Yes, he has some Egyptian-based superpowers, which are hard to describe. Yes, the split personality stuff does exist, and different versions of him do different things, but I like the Moon Knight show. It started out hot, phased off in the end, but okay, good show. Where have those characters been? Do you remember the other movie that I was talking about? Eternals I hopped on a bit more. Shang-Chi not as much because I like the movie. Moon Knight, She-Hulk. Where are they at? Are these shows required viewing or not? Because I'll tell you what right now. WandaVision is, if you want to understand Doctor Strange 2. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I assume, will be for when Captain America 4 comes out. And when Thunderbolts comes out. And Miss Marvel definitely is to understand the Marvels. And also, WandaVision is to understand the Marvels. Like, some of this is required viewing, some of it isn't. You know, Loki seems to be off in his own bubble. It seems to be tying into Deadpool 3 a little bit. But Moon Knight is in his own bubble. She-Hulk is not mentioned back. Shang-Chi, Eternals, on their own islands. They don't need to exist in the MCU, honestly. They can be their own things. Which, if that's the case, awesome. Because I'll tell you what right now. One thing that Disney Plus did right was Werewolf by Night. Werewolf by Night is such a good... It's not a movie because it's not feature length, but like I'm going to call it a movie. It's such a good movie. It is directed by Giacchino, who's normally a composer, so of course he does the composition for this as well. It's so good. And if you get one thing out of this video, and you have Disney Plus, go watch Werewolf by Night. Because it is just that good. That kind of like flavor and oomph and like just emotion behind something is something that the MCU so desperately requires at this point. And it's so floundering to see the stock Marvel formula be driven into the ground by constant movies and television shows, where Werewolf by Night was just dumped on Disney Plus and nobody talked about it and nobody discovered it because you wanted to just throw it out there and throw it in with a million other things you were producing in the year. And are you seriously telling me you didn't think that 9 projects in a year was gonna overdo it? 3 projects a year was giving us the discussion on whether or not we were gonna experience MCU burnout, and you thought tripling the output wasn't going to cause a problem. Now, who am I yelling at? I'm yelling at the higher-ups in Disney. I'm not yelling at the directors. I'm not yelling at the actors. Because what are they? Anthony Mackie gonna show up and be like, guys, I think we're taking too many Falcon projects right now? No. He's doing his job. I can't fault him. You know? I can't fault any of the actors for what they're doing here. Directors, sometime, you thought, but like, what are they gonna fight against the higher-ups at Disney? It just stinks. This has been a consistent part of my life for over a decade, you know? And to be in this position where there are 3 projects I haven't seen yet. Like I said, Loki Season 2, What If Season 2, and Echo. Echo, great example. Did anybody love Echo's story in Hawkeye? I didn't. It feels like a spin-off of a spin-off at this point. Marvel has been focused on making characters A-list stars since 2008. Iron Man comes out, was not an A-list star. Was not a marketable name, except to comic book fans. He comes out, good success, starts off this whole thing. Robert Downey Jr. becomes a household name. Of course, Tony Stark and Iron Man become household names. Awesome. When this whole thing started, I'll tell you what, Hulk, Spider-Man, and then like the X-Men, so like Wolverine, I mean, the movies helped them too, but those are your big names. Iron Man was not it. Captain America a little bit more, but Hulk definitely. Thor, not really. If the Avengers just came out without the previous stuff, some people would know Iron Man and Cap, but like there'd be a lot of questions of who the heck is Black Widow? Who is this Hawkeye person? That movie does it so well that it describes who everybody is and introduces everybody in interesting ways, so it's fine. But just thinking about if that movie didn't introduce people really well, people would just be lost and confused, and that's how, it's how it kind of feels. Because like required viewing makes it harder for people to love the big stuff. Yes, the people who love the required viewing are gonna enjoy the bigger stuff more. But we're at the point where the required viewing is on a streaming service that not everyone wants to pay for, not everyone has. People want to go out to see the big cultural events in the theaters, okay? But when you give them required reading on multiple shows, it becomes much harder to get people excited about the new projects. And the Marvels really emphasizes that. People know who Captain Marvel was. Clearly that movie made over $1 billion. People do not know who Monica Rambeau are, and they do not know who Kamala Khan are. So, movie didn't do very well. That's what I think gave Marvel pause, and we're fixing things. Finally, it seems like we're fixing things we haven't seen yet. Am I excited for Deadpool 3? Yes, I am excited for Deadpool 3. That's what kind of spawned this discussion of it, was I'm excited for a Marvel movie again. But the thing is, I'd be excited for Deadpool 3 if it wasn't an MCU movie. That's just the hard facts of it all. I'm excited to see Wolverine on screen again. I'm excited to see more Deadpool. Been a while since we've seen Deadpool on the screen. So, I'm excited to see it. What comes after that is what's going to shape the MCU going forward. Okay, I can be excited for a Deadpool, because Deadpool was good before the MCU. But this whole thing, this is a mess. One of the biggest issues with it is it's hard to recommend the MCU to people at the moment. Because they hear constantly that it's in shambles, it's falling apart. Why should I get into it if it's going to disappoint me? Fair point. And even if it was consistently good, at least, every show, every movie was just consistently good, There's no payoff anymore. Phases don't mean anything anymore. And there's so much of it. There's like, even when Endgame was coming out, it felt like a lot to tell people to go watch whatever it was, 24, I think, movies to go catch up. But it was doable. It was a doable amount. Here, I can give you the list of them. Check my letterbox. I'll give you a list of movies to go watch. Go ahead. Now you have to watch 10 more, plus however many television shows there are now. I don't want to count them all. Some have multiple seasons. Some of them just feel like one-offs. There's holiday events. There's everything. It's all canon. It all exists in the same world. So someone says, actually, no, Eternals didn't actually happen. I don't want to say like it was wasted viewing then, because it is its own movie, and it's a good movie, I think. But it's, in the terms of MCU, it feels like a filler episode, you know? It's hard to recommend to people. It's hard to feel passionate for it. I want it to be fixed, you know? It's easy for me to stand here and say, make better movies. Make less television shows. They're the guys that have to do it. Big dogs over at Disney have to let the directors actually direct things. I understand cohesion factor is a big play, and Marvel movies should feel like Marvel movies a little bit, but I don't know. So I'm excited more for what James Gunn's going to do. I'm very interested to see how the DCU is going to turn out, because right now the MCU... But anyways, I think I got everything out. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I mean, there are other parts of it. Like I said, the big talking points. The movies in a bubble have been good. There's too many of them. The quality control isn't really there, and the CGI is bad, and I'm sure. But in a bubble, I don't think they're the problem. I think the television's a problem. There's way too many of them. There's way too much television. The TV shows themselves are bloated, and they should have just been movie scripts. We're moving too fast through the phases, and the phases don't mean anything anymore. It's hard to recommend to people. It's hard to get excited for. It's just all culminated to this point where I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for Deadpool 3, but I'm more excited that there's not any other MCU movies coming out this year. Give me a break. Good idea. So, that'll about do it for me today. What are your thoughts on the MCU? Are you still a diehard fan of it? I used to be. And it sucks to stand here and say I'm not at the moment. But maybe I will be again one day. But that'll about do it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching, and as always, like this if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you at some point.